We're here at the CrowdStrike Government Summit with Adam Meyers, Head of Intelligence at CrowdStrike. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, according to CrowdStrike's Global Threat Report, it looks as though China Nexus threat actors have significantly ramped up their activity. What do government agencies and public sector leaders most need to know about this spike in activity? And are there tactics that they're using that can help prevent an attack?
Yeah, I think one of the things everybody was focused on over the last year was the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And while everybody was really focused on that, they were missing that there was a sleeping giant out there. And China has been active in every geographic region, every business vertical, and all day, every day, they're stealing sensitive information. They're using it to drive their own technology in their own companies and looking to elevate China to first a regional and ultimately a global hegemon in order to cement their power in the world.
So just to follow up on that, can you talk about some of the vulnerabilities that public sector agencies really need to be thinking about and what they can do to prevent those kinds of attacks?
So one of the interesting things that we've noticed is that vulnerabilities across the globe, tying back to China, that number of vulnerabilities that are being weaponized and exploited by China has gone up pretty significantly. The Chinese government mandates that all vulnerability research needs to go through first the CNITSEC, which ultimately rolls up to the Ministry of State Security, which is effectively giving Chinese cyber operators the ability to get first dibs on any vulnerability that's out there. In fact, Log4j was a good example of that. With Log4j, that vulnerability was discovered by Alibaba researchers, and they didn't report it to the CNITSEC, and that caused a lot of problems for them. And when you don't report things the way they're supposed to be through the proper channels in China, they can use things like corporate social credit and even individual social credit to compel you to do that and to go through the proper channel. And I think that's what we started to see with Alibaba in that case. So, Chinese research has been exploding, and one of the things that we noticed was that the vulnerabilities that are being exploited used to be that somebody would issue a patch and threat actor would move on, find a new vulnerability to exploit. But in the last year, we look at things like proxy logon and proxy shell, and when a patch would be issued, say by Microsoft, it was a Band-Aid. And Chinese threat actors particularly were adept at moving around that Band-Aid. So if it was a vulnerability that was unauthenticated, then the next version of it, it would be a vulnerability that would work on authenticated systems. And if they fixed that, they would move on to other ways to exploit the same vulnerabilities. So it used to be that you would say adversaries would try to find new things rather than to re-exploit or try to work harder at exploiting the things that they already know about, but that's no longer the case. We're starting to see that they are investing considerable effort in weaponizing these vulnerabilities and leveraging them for offensive operations across, as I said, every organization in the globe is in their crosshair.
I appreciate your putting that into perspective for us. Just following up on this idea of vulnerability and vulnerability rediscovery, can you elaborate on kind of what that means and how it could impact the public sector and why patch vulnerabilities may still be at risk or create risks, sort of building on your previous comment?
Yeah, I think Log4j is a good example. When Log4j first became a problem, December 9th, 2021, a lot of organizations were rushing to find Log4j implementations in their environment and quickly realized they didn't know where it was inside their own environment. And then through JCDC, which is the Joint Cyber Defense Collaboration under CISA, we started to see that there were thousands of other products that used Log4j, and the threat actors were, rather than finding new vulnerabilities, they were finding new ways or new products to trigger the Log4j vulnerability inside of.
Fascinating and disturbing all at the same time. Well, Adam Meyers, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights and perspective here at the CrowdStrike Government Summit.
Thanks for having me.